My name is Travis Ridgen. I am 27 years old and I'm a professional hockey goalie. I had cam hip surgery in January of 2023, and 1 year later, I want to share with you how this surgery changed my life for the better. This video is all about my experiences pre-surgery, what led me to get into the surgery itself, and the full recovery from day one to returning the skate to where I am today. This video is sponsored by Sheath Underwear. Let's begin. At the end of the day, I'm doing what feels right for me and chasing down my dream. I have so much chronic pain in my hip, in my knee, my groin, especially my hip flexor, that I just want that to go away. In the last month of the season while I was skating, I found myself developing a lot of low back issues. My back was starting to kill me, and I think as bad as my hip, my knee were, I think that my back was probably just as bad because I physically can't do certain things because of the limitations of my hip. They have to go through my knee, and then my knee gets so sore. I have nowhere to put the strain except for my knee or my back. It has to go up, it has to go down, it has to go somewhere because my hip physically can't do what I want to do. A little bit of a soft seal on the ice is one of the goals that I want to have for this summer when I start skating again. And I just want it to be done because I want to become the goaltender that I know I can be. So first off, I want to start by disclaiming that I am not a doctor. I am a goaltender who is explaining to you my experience through this process that hopefully will help everybody watching, but at the same time, not everything I'm saying is going to work for everybody out there. Again, this is my experience. Not everything is going to be right for you. With that being said, let's begin. Now, what is cam hip surgery? Now, this was my hip prior to the surgery, and right here and here, and these are bone spurs in my femur, so when you look back at a normal hip, you could probably see how that would become a problem as it extremely limits my internal rotation. Now, before getting my hip surgery, my symptoms were groin strains in my late teens, hip flexor strains in my early 20s, and knee issues well into my mid-20s. Now, specifically with the knee issues, I'm talking about bursitis, which is the inflammation of a sac in my knee. But nonetheless, all these were the results of the bone growths in my hip becoming so bad, limiting my internal rotation that it would end up tearing my labrum. And as a result, the muscles took on the strain. And when the muscles became fully maxed out, the stress had to go somewhere, and that ultimately ended up being in my knee. In 2022, the only time I was able to skate was under cortisone steroid injections in my knee. I could not skate normally without these, and I did find that acupuncture helped for a bit, but eventually we get to the point where I would just get injured and I just needed time to recover. So essentially what I'm telling you is that the bone growths from my cam hip were making it so bad I could not play the game without being injured, and I essentially had no choice when I did get my surgery in January 23. Now, prior to it, I needed to get a physical done as well as an x-ray the day before the surgery so the surgeon had a map of exactly what he was working with. But after that, I was ready to get fixed. Hip surgery day.
Part of the reason why you're stiff is it's just the bones themselves are banging into each other. I want you to be able to play goalie and not need cortisone injection. You're going to definitely have some aches and pains as you go through all this. It's not going to be the smoothest sail in the world, but it should be much, much better than what you're currently going through.
Whee! I always forget when people are general.
Hold on, I got it. I got it. There we go. You ever heard of Ric Flair?
No, I haven't.
No? He's a kiss stealing, a wheeling dealing,
Limousine right!
jet flying son of a gun. Oh, it's gonna be cold outside. Goddamn, don't bust my other hip. Oh, it's cold. He just cold.
You look pretty messed up. Okay, careful. What are you doing? Travis has been home 5 minutes. He's pretty loopy still, but his hip is fixed.
But my 3-inch hammer isn't fixed.
So you had a labrum tear from the front, sort of traversing around the front towards the side of the hip joint, and I freed that all up and got it fixed with 4 anchors and some sutures. So it was nice and stable, and I got a nice reduction and a nice fix, so I was pretty happy with that. The cartilage on the pelvis side, the acetabulum, was a little bit banged up. We grade these injuries from grade 1, which is minor, to grade 4, which is very severe, and so yours is probably a grade 2. The cartilage on the head of the femur was perfect and normal, so that wasn't an issue. And then I got that big chunk of bone on the front of the femur, the cam lesion. I got that burnt down quite nicely. That took me some time and was a bunch of work, but we persisted and got a nice correction there.
Now, about 2 days after surgery, I got to take my bandages off for the first time, and this is what that looked like. Got pretty purple and looked pretty gnarly. The first 5 days specifically recovering were pretty boring. To be honest, I really didn't do much, but on day 5, I started the first step of the process, which was at physio, where I would essentially relearn how to walk again, how to move my leg, and much to my surprise, I was on the exercise bike, a stationary bike, 5 days post-surgery. Now, the physio process continued for the next 3 months, and it looked a lot like trying to get my surgery hip to support all of my body weight, which took about 2 to 3 weeks, up to getting my hip flexion to 90 degrees, and after about 2 weeks, I had my stitches removed, which is what that looks like, and it was kind of gross. As far as my normal day-to-day life goes, I would say that was affected for about 2 to 3 weeks. After that, it was all aesthetics and trying to get everything back in running order for hockey season. Now, a big part of this process was a machine that I called Igor. Now, Igor is the ice machine that I put around my hip throughout the day and at night when I would go to bed, and it would help circulate cold water on my hip to keep inflammation down and prevent infections. But after about 5 weeks of use, I had to go return him to the clinic that I rented him from. By the way, Igor does make a fantastic water bowl for my cat to drink out of. Side note there. And in month 2 and 3, it was pretty much the same as before, building up my hip strength because I was super, super weak after surgery, working on some basic squats, light hinging, and a little bit of glute bridges. Now, as I just mentioned, I was making a lot of progress in physio, but the ultimate sign-off to get back to skating comes from my surgeon, and he was in Winnipeg, so I went back to Winnipeg. So this is where I got my hip surgery done, and I get to see my surgeon today, hopefully, get the final thumbs up to go back skating. All right, cleared to skate. Now after that, I got my gear. I headed from Winnipeg back to Vancouver to start skating again. Now, my return to ice skating was extremely slow, and I was super, super stiff at first. Although there were a few things that felt like I'd never stopped in my non-surgery hip, there were a lot of things in my newly fixed hip that felt like I'd never done them before. And it did take a little bit to get comfortable again. Now, month 4 in May was where I started to see a lot of progress. I was starting to get low in my stance again and do all these essential goaltending movements, some which were a little bit challenging more than others, but all of them were doable in the month of May. And it was at the end of May where I hit a little bit of a roadblock in regards to my mobility and my range, so I started doing acupuncture to flush out any scar tissue in my surgery hip, and that made a huge world of a difference, opening up my hip, starting to allow me to take full control of the strength and the range that I had access to post-surgery. And this is what that looked like. Now, June was month 5 and the start of skating with real shooters again. And it was like I was starting to feel like my normal self again on the ice. Although it wasn't perfect, it did feel like every single skate I was unlocking a new ability or a new piece of range. And it was literally like a video game. It's kind of what it felt like. And month 6 in July was much of the same. Something new every time I would skate. Keep in mind, I was skating every day in Halifax with Jack Hardigan, and that really did help a lot to work out the scar tissue in my hip, a little bit of the kinks, and ultimately getting my body to understand that we can use this range, we will not get hurt like before, and getting comfortable. Now, August was month 8, and I felt 100%. I had fully unlocked all of my physical capabilities at this point in time, and it was just going to be a matter of time of practicing these with my mobility, my flexibility, and strength to make it an everyday thing, and to ultimately try to get closer to perfection. Now, September and October were interesting because as I started to gain full access to what my hip was capable of, I did begin to develop some ankle issues, which all came on the non-surgery side. So I'm nursing a little bit of an ankle issue. So I was talking to Matt Murray the other day, and I guess once you get your hips fixed, it starts creating other issues, specifically in the ankle. It's very common, extremely common for guys that are 6'4", 6'5", which I meet that criteria quite nicely. So here on the lens. But yeah, just working through it, different tape jobs, different. As the season began, I was trying to be very mindful of my ankle, making sure that I was taping it every day before practice, doing my daily mobility exercises, and doing lots of rolling on my calf and hamstring, as well as exercise band traction my ankle so that it wasn't getting so tight. And after about 2 to 3 weeks into the season, skating every single day, I did find that there was still a lot of scar tissue built up in my hip that I thought I'd flushed out over the summer, but was still there from the surgery. And although I did find my mobility started to become slightly restricted from that scar tissue, and the ankle issues did over time go away, I was still moving and performing more comfortably than previous to my surgery. And that ultimately brings us to today and the 1 year later moment. Now, quickly a word from today's video sponsor, Sheath Underwear. Sheath has been the biggest supporter for me for over a year now, and they make the best underwear in the world, and here is why. They have the dual pouch technology, which helps to separate your dick and your balls so they can't stick to the side of your leg or bat wing. They also have a cooling bamboo mesh that will keep you comfortable and cool, so when you get a pair and you use the code TRAVSUCKS, you get 20% off Sheath Underwear today. This is the best underwear money can buy. I promise you that. And if you click that first thing in the video description, you can learn more about Sheath Underwear today. And again, 20% off when you use the code TRAVSUCKS. And thanks to Sheath for sponsoring today's video. Essentially, I went from barely being able to touch post to post on the goal line pre-surgery to being very comfortable doing it and having a lot of mobility. I went from having a super restricted and tight back and shoulders to now I feel like my hips can take more of that stress up. It's opened things up, and I feel like my hands are kind of like an octopus. Like I can get my hands in places that I wasn't able to before, and it feels awesome. But most importantly, I am 100% pain-free. There is no more chronic injuries like I had before. And although nothing is ever perfect, neither is the surgery, I was able to sit in a jammed airplane seat from Vancouver to Halifax for 6+ hours in July and skate the same day that I landed, something that I never would have been able to do before the surgery because your hips are so jammed in that cam hip position. All in all, I think I would tell myself before January of 2023 that I have zero regrets now about the surgery. I know my surgeon did ask me to keep his name and his face out of the video, but he absolutely changed my life, and this was the best thing I've done possibly in my career, definitely in the recent years. I feel like a new goalie, and my quality of life outside of hockey on a day-to-day basis has changed so much, where I'm not having to roll and stretch every 5 minutes. It is absolutely incredible. And my only regret is, honestly, I wish that I did it sooner. I think a big takeaway I tell anybody watching this video is do not rush the recovery. There are timelines that your surgeon and your doctors will give you for a reason. Now, I was under the supervision of, as long as there is no pain in the front of the hip, anything goes. And there were a few times where walking upstairs in Vancouver at an incline, even my first couple of skates back, my hips did feel really, really exhausted. But I think my experience isn't everybody's experience, but I will say sacrificing half the year in Motor City and sacrificing a good chunk of the winter, spring, and part of summer to get this recovery in was absolutely worth it. I want to say thank you so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I'll see you then.